So we're going to start now. Hello, candidates, and to all of you Matadors watching this, welcome to the Spring 2020 Associate Students Elections Debate. My name is Marvin Choudhury, and I'm the Chair of Elections here at CSUN. I'm going to be moderating today's event.
I'm Ricardo Salinas, and I'm the Assistant Chair of Elections. I will also be moderating this debate.
So we're here with four of the presidential candidates and their vice presidents, all aiming to become the next Associate Student President and Vice President. We have presidential candidate Leslie Aguirre and our vice presidential candidate Alex Aquino. Feel free to wave hi. We also have presidential candidate Rebecca Grinberg and her vice presidential candidate Nicholas Morrison Welch. Next, we have presidential candidate Rose Merida and her vice presidential candidate Dion Turner. Finally, we have presidential candidate Mariah Murray and her vice presidential candidate Jocelyn Silva, who was not able to make it today. So let's get straight to it. Candidates, you were asked to prepare an opening statement of 2 minutes each to give this opening statement. Mariah, you'll be starting us off.
Okay, so hello guys. I'm just gonna go ahead and read it because I didn't memorize it. Okay, so hello Matadors. My name is Mariah Murray and I'm running to be your Associated Students President. So before I get into like the tea, let me just start off lightly. So basically, I'm from Rancho Cucamonga. So I'm from a community where feeling welcome and at home is like our specialty. When I first visited CSUN in 2017, I felt that same energy and I knew that this is a school that I want to be a part of. So being a first generation student, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that like I would be in my comfort zone if I came to CSUN. So upon arriving in Northridge, I searched for a club or organization to make me feel like I found my place. So I began looking into different clubs and I even joined like sports clubs. I went to multiple meetings and everything was great, but I just felt like there was a different way that I can leave my mark on CSUN. So fast forward to spring 2020, AKA present, I began researching what it meant to be an Associated Student, and I completely fell in love with the idea of being the voice of our CSUN students. As a kid, I always wanted to run for a school election, and I now have that confidence and the desire to do so. So once all of this came out, my vice president and I immediately began drafting ideas and changes we would like to implement on campus. We came up with many concepts that will motivate students academically, support higher school spirit, and promote the available resources, to name a few. We spend a good portion of our time on campus, rather it be studying for tests, buying unhealthy snacks at the Mercado, or walking around the USU to run into our crush that doesn't even know we exist. But my point is, if we're gonna be at school as much time as we are, we might as well make the best of it and turn it into a home. So overall, my goal as your Associated Students President is to transition campus from a school to a home. I would love it if you all gave me the opportunity to make a change. And once again, I am Mariah Murray and I'm running to be your Associated Students President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah. Leslie?
Okay, cool. Alrighty. Well, good afternoon, fellow Matadors at home. My name is Leslie Aguirre, and I'm running to be your next Associate Students President. It is an honor to be a candidate this year and to be part of a campaign that excites a diverse coalition of students who demand change. The change we want to see and the problems on our campus that we want to solve cannot be solved by embracing old ideas. Our students, all 39,000 of them, deserve a bold vision and student leaders who will bring in a new era of new beginnings. As daughter of Salvadoran immigrants who left behind their homes to find their new beginning, I am committed to serving the needs and interests of our students who are seeking to better themselves and their communities. My experience and service to campus orgs and associated students has given me the tools to understand what it takes to be a student leader. Our slate focuses on three main points. Equitable access to associated students and higher education through transparency, empowerment of historically marginalized communities and campus services, and consistent advocacy to uplift and represent the student voice wherever we go. The New Beginning Slate wants to be your student representatives to ensure change for all students.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
Hello?
There you go.
Hello, Matadors. Thank you so much for having me here today. This is a true privilege, and I'm so grateful to be here with all of you today. Now, I can take up your time talking about myself, but this is not what our elections are about. Our elections are about you. The reason I'm here today is because CSUN students are truly inspiring, and we all deserve to have our voices heard. to be Matadors empowered. And that is our slate's mission, to create a community of Matadors empowered, where every student truly has the capability to create the change needed to be successful in every way, academically, professionally, and personally. I want to bring to you the change you have been asking for and the change you need. In a time where everything is uncertain, we need leadership that is reflective of and responsive to our student body. Through providing essential services, creating an engaged, united, and strong campus community that wants to spend time on campus, and transforming the CSUN administration to be more transparent, we can collaborate to accomplish our goals and support one another. The late Kobe Bryant said that the most important thing is to try and inspire people so that they can be great at whatever they do. And as a slate, we strive to ensure that every student is inspired so that we are all empowered in making vital decisions and speaking on our own behalf. I know I have been inspired by all of you, and I hope to have the privilege to give back to our student body through continuing this powerful movement, empowering every Matador to make the changes that we need to be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rose?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool, thanks. Hi everyone, so my name is Rose Marita. My gender pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm very excited to be running to be your next Associate Students Leadership along with Dion Turner. I have been part of the New Student Orientation Program through the Office of Student Involvement and Development in many different roles, and this office has allowed me to grow as a student leader and develop myself as an orientation leader, Matador mentor, Take 30 cast member, Take 31 director, and now student coordinator that focuses on student development. Within AS, I have been part of AS Productions as a producer, where I received the skill set to work well under pressure in the world of event planning and team-oriented tasks. Then I wanted to help students find a niche, as I did here at CSUN. So I became part of Camp Matador as a counselor, and a year later, a student coordinator to focus on the development of the counselors and facilitators, so they can be the best mentors for incoming students. With the support of many individuals, I had the honor to serve as your AS Vice President for the past academic year of 2018-2019, and that experience was life-changing to say the least. It allowed me and several other student leaders to see how much change we can make with the right mindset and leadership team. But enough about me. Let's talk a little bit why we're here. AS is about being part of an organization that's bigger than any student here, bigger than any student on this computer, because honestly, it's about them. It's about the students who pay a fee to be here and have the proper resources for them, and it's up to us to make sure that we don't fail them. AS has the primary goal to be the primary advocate for students. So again, I interpret it as this. It's not about me, it's about them. The actual definition of a project is an individual or collaborative enterprise that is carefully planned or designed to achieve a particular aim or goal. So with Project Red, it is a project that revitalizes equity and diversity. This latest basis that we do not expect everything to change overnight, but we're viewing this year as a project that takes time, adequate resources, and led that by people who actually care about the students' needs and wants. And I really hope that this debate enlightens all Matadors and it reflects on their vote on April 1st and 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Now we're going to jump into the first part of our debate. This portion consists of several general questions regarding AS and CSUN directed only towards the presidential candidates. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer this question, or the question. Once everyone has answered the original question, candidates will be given a minute for rebuttals. Once everyone that wants a rebuttal has spoken, candidates will be given additional 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Only presidential candidates can do rebuttals during this portion of the debate.
Candidates will be muted when they aren't speaking. If you'd like a rebuttal, candidates must use the raised hand feature via Zoom, and another moderator will unmute your microphone. If you choose not to use the full time for any of these portions, you do not get to use that leftover time again. The order in which candidates are asked the original question will be randomized for each individual question. If you need me to repeat the question, please don't hesitate to ask. With the rules out of the way, let's begin. Leslie, Associated Students is CSUN's student body government and acts to serve as a voice for all CSUN students. How do you plan on serving as the voice of CSUN students?
Thank you, Marvin, for that question. As president, my priority will be to be reaching out to students consistently and getting to know exactly what their needs are and what changes that they would like to see. As chair of legislative affairs, which I had served this semester or this year, I had the chance to lead a lobby corps. This lobby corps was very crucial in actually going out to students, reaching out to them, going up to them and asking them questions about, what are their needs about different parts of the campus. And so as president, having a team like that and deploying, our members of AS leadership to go out and do that will be one of the methods that I will partake in ensuring that we are hearing student voices and being their representative for them.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
Yes, thank you, Marvin. So I don't want to be a voice for the students. I want to be a voice on behalf of the students. I think it's so important that we don't take away the power from the students to speak for themselves, because all of us have so much wisdom to offer. And I will do this by reaching out to students on a one-to-one basis, making sure that our Senate representatives are empowered in the tools to reach out to those senators, meet with their constituents on a one-to-one basis, hand out legislative referrals, and educate our constituents on what a legislative referral is and how to fill one out and what it does. I mean, students are the voice of our campus, not the representatives. And I think that it's important that we hold on to that idea if we want to effectively represent our students.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Rose?
Can you please repeat the question?
So Associated Students is CSUN student body government and acts to serve as a voice for all CSUN students. How do you plan on serving as the voice of CSUN students?
Thank you. So how I plan to serve as a voice, it's been said, but honestly, I think that there's a huge weight that carries when you allow students to speak for themselves. And I think a lot of it has to do with accessibility. I think it's really hard for students to come in on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. and force them to come into our space. And I, as president, I think that I want to educate my leadership team, because I don't think there's an I in team. I think that it falls on the entire leadership administration to really put in effort and energy and ensuring that students are out there communicating with other students and allowing them to be informed outside that Senate meeting space. Even if it means that each senator of each college creates a meeting within their college to talk to the different department chairs and deans, or even if it means going out there and sitting. This is something that I've done in the past, where I took the red couch tour and literally sat in different spaces of the campus community. And I know that this year a lot of students reached out missing that, because again, they don't have the time, or they have class, or they're commuting. They can't come to Monday meetings, but they can afford to come around, like, let's say 3 p.m. on a campus and get educated on what's going on. I think a lot of times you also have to allow ourselves to feel uncomfortable and enter spaces that we are not educated in ourselves, so we can get educated. And I think being in a position of power is the same as being in a position of privilege. And it's okay if you feel uncomfortable, because at the end of the day, if you're uncomfortable, you're probably learning something, you're probably doing something right.
All right. Thank you, Rose. Mariah?
Well, a lot of the girls hit really, really good points, but I just wanted to point out the fact that as an Associated Students president, my goal would be to actually let the students know that their opinions matter, their voices matter, because up until spring of 2020, when I met some of the people on the elections committee, I didn't even realize that we had the opportunity to speak and to tell people what we wanted. I didn't know about the office hours available to speak to the senators or the president. And I didn't even know who our president was. Like, I had seen photos of her because people reposted on, different platforms, but no one ever got through to me. And from someone like me, I'm able to speak to anybody, and I like to speak to anybody, and I would let everybody know what their options are, what they are available to do. Whereas in my 3 years of going to CSUN, I didn't know anything about Associated Students, and I find it very, very important to get that across to everyone, because granted, you can't get to every single person, but it is important to get to as many people as possible. And being that I have been involved and still didn't know about these things, it would be my major goal to allow students to know what their options are, what they can say, what they can do. And like Rose was saying, bring them into our space and us go into their space, rather than just, Associated Students being Associated Students, and letting it be, us and them. It should not be us and them, because we're all Matadors at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you, Mariah. Are there any rebuttals? All right. Seeing none, let's move on.
Rebecca?
Yes. Sorry, I had a rebuttal, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. So why don't we do that? So if you have a rebuttal, there's a chat option. You can kind of click raise hand in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, it's not. I don't have that option, or I can't see it at least.
Okay, then just raise your hand in that case. I don't think the Zoom thing is working that well. Just raise your hand and one of us will call on you then. So Rebecca?
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to add on to the fact that There was no mention that I will be expecting students to come in on a Monday morning. However, I do want to provide incentives for student organizations and their representatives to come in to present their concerns, issues, and ideas to our Senate meetings. I completely understand that this is an uncomfortable situation. And as president, as a slate, as an administration, our main goal will be to provide those resources and advocacy tools so that our students know where to find these resources, and so that we can meet them in their colleges, in their classrooms, in their club meetings, and sit with them on a one-to-one basis and explain and ask and question and evaluate where we can do better as an administration. We need to bring those faces to the people. That's 100% right. And we need to reach out to clubs and start from the top, start from outside in. Where is our community? Where do our matadors need our help and guidance? I think CSUN students are incredibly wise, and everyone is an expert of their own experience. So I don't think it's fair to say that we can speak
All
for
right, Rebecca, that's time.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Leslie, did you raise your hand?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to what Mariah had mentioned, and I agree, is that Associated Students is not accessible to its students, whether it's difficult for students to make it on a Monday morning, or whether it's students, unable to find the information that they need to contact their senators or contact the AS president or anyone in the cabinet. AS should be more accessible, which is why within our campaign platforms, access is the number one thing that we want to tackle. Students are paying into Associated Students, so they should be able to get the information and their money's worth. Access to us just really means ensuring that students know where to find this information and how they can reach out to their representatives, and also making it more accessible for our AS Senate and people in our cabinet and our leadership as a whole to actually go out and go talk to our students as well.
Thank you, Leslie. Rose?
I'm really excited to hear for the rest of this debate because I keep hearing a lot of things like, we're going to provide accessibility or we're going to provide incentives. So I'm excited to hear what are the actual details, because being in the seat of vice presidency, I got to see that there is already a position of chair of clubs and orgs. There's already a position of chair of legislative where they go on lobby course. But I'm really excited to see what other ideas potentially these candidates have to bring to associate students and to CSUN as a whole. Because again, a lot of times I think that we fall into the loop of saying things, but we don't follow through. And I think that relies on not just us as presidents, but as the whole leadership administration. So thank you. I'm excited to hear the rest of this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Mariah?
Okay, just quickly, I know like the girls were mentioning that they would reach out to organizations and different things like that, but just based on personal experience, freshman year of college, I was actually depressed. I spent a lot of my time in my dorm because I didn't know any outlets. So I feel like another key point and people to target would not just be people in organizations, because they've already found somewhere that they feel accepted. It will be those students that come to campus and leave campus. They don't stick around. They don't go to the events. They don't try to talk to the representatives because they don't realize they have them. And I think that is another key thing that we need to focus on, rather than just people already in an organization, because clearly they feel accepted, but it's about the students that don't.
Thank you, Mariah. Are there any other rebuttals? All right, seeing none, let's move on.
Rebecca, if you were elected president, what would be the first thing you would do at the start of your term? What is your priorities and specific goals?
My priority is to be truly representative of our students and to learn from our students. I am just a single person, and I have done my best to create a diverse slate, but I know, and I think all of us are aware, that we cannot accurately or effectively, one person cannot effectively represent an entire population. My goal would be to reach out to each college and go to each class and find out where can associated students create more access, more resources, more advocacy platforms, greater transparency, and build a strong community on our campus. I think one of the main things that we have to do is going through our underserved communities. Most of our students are commuters. So how do we engage those commuters? We meet them by the parking lots. We provide other resources for those commuters who do not feel involved on campus. We go to different clubs and orgs and work with their representatives to see where we can provide greater access to resources and their representatives individually. We go and we collaborate with faculty to see where we can provide greater access to books and videos and lectures for students who may not be able to afford this. The average CSUN student is expected to spend approximately $2,000 just on books and supplies, which is absurd considering most of our students can't afford to pay for their regular tuition. I think we need to work hand in hand with the students, collaborate with our faculty, and stop fighting each other and start working with each other.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rose,
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
if you were elected president, what would be the first thing you would do at the start of your term? What are your priorities and specific goals?
Cool, thank you, appreciate it. So I think I would start with internally doing an assessment on how AS is, because if we're not internally strong, then I do not know how the heck we're gonna be externally strong and be able to advocate on at a CSUN platform and CSU platform. A lot of our goals within Project Red is that for associate students to interact more with student body, but to really interact in an formal and informal setting, whether it be conversations about policy, procedure, sustainability, mental and physical health, as well as the social aspects at CSUN and the community at CSUN, and really try to elevate that school spirit that I know that Matadors can have. I think a lot of times, again, we get lost on like, okay, this is a to-do list, this is what we have to do, but we forget that like, a lot of times, like we do need to have conversations, but we have to have conversations where we do more of the listening, less of the talking to be able to understand. And I think that one of our primary goals in the project is to recreate or rekindle some partnerships within the university, because as an individual organization, yeah, we can definitely be strong, but I think we can be stronger with partnerships, whether it be reaching out to our CSUN athletics, our CSUN Greek life, our, again, the academic departments, and see what else we can do to better serve our students. And I think that it's really important to bring into light that it's not just about equality, but it's more of an equity aspect and providing that platform to those who don't have those resources or those who have gotten their voices lost. Again, I think that it's a primary goal to represent ourselves in a way that we can hear the majority of the students and have students actually feel validated and not just tolerated.
Thank you, Rose. Leslie,
Could you repeat the question one more time, please?
if you were elected president, what would be the first thing you would do at the start of your term? What are your priorities and specific goals?
Thank you. So at the start of my term, I would like to start with being or getting ahead of the curve of reaching out to our student bodies. So that starts with communicating with our clubs and orgs and really getting to know early on what are their needs. So that way we can understand with a goal, or we can move forward with a goal in mind. This also means reaching out to our different campus entities, such as the food pantry, our dream center, and whatnot, really understanding what they need. So that way we're not hearing of problems later on in our term when nothing can be done, or it's too late to get something done. And so being vigilant and starting early and reaching out to those communities is really important to us. The next thing that I would like to do at the beginning of my term is a rearrangement of the AS cabinet. I feel that there are positions that could use a lot more improvement to give them more power, or empower them more so that they can lead students, or they can serve students more effectively. And that also means possibly creation of new positions that can tackle different issues on our campus, or really developing positions that are existing right now and ensuring that students are being served the best way that they can be served.
Thank you, Leslie. Mariah?
All right, I'm back. So basically, one of my main priorities would definitely be exposing what resources we already have available to our students, obviously, because I feel like this is, once again, self-experience. This was my third year at CSUN, and I just recently discovered a resource that is directed for people like from trauma, basically, like just to keep it simple, that I didn't know about. And I feel like if I knew about it freshman year, I would have been way better off, and I wouldn't have experienced half of the things I experienced. So I would definitely want to get those resources out there and promote it much better, which I'm sure that there's a lot of outlets to do so, but just reaching further out, basically. And then furthermore, if we put the resources out there, students will be able to tell us what resources we're missing for them personally. Whereas if we're just we're not speaking to them and we're not telling them what they already have available, they're not even going to know what they need, as we won't even know what they need. And I definitely like the idea that one of the girls mentioned about bridging Greek life, sports, and all of that stuff together. I think it was Rose, right? Like bridging all that stuff together, because that will also just bring unity in the school spirit that we need to just feel that motivation on campus.
Thank you, candidates. Are there any rebuttals? Okay, no rebuttals. Move on.
Rose, many students have been critical of how the university and AS administration handled the COVID-19 situation, especially in terms of commencement being moved. What are your thoughts on the way the university and AS administration handled the COVID-19 situation, and would you have pushed to do commencement virtually?
Oh my God, I love this question because I actually work for the Office of Student Enrollment Development, and my boss is actually the person who oversees commencement and all honors convocation ceremonies. So I'm actually right in the middle of all these conversations. And so my personal opinion as a senior is fairly different than what I will answer this question because, again, as the administration, I want to be knowledgeable and I want to respect the fact that every single student may think differently and every student may have a different opinion. But from what I've seen on social media, from what I've seen of word of mouth, from what I've seen in our office, is that a lot of students would like commencement to be postponed at a later date where they can actually walk, and they would prefer not to have the virtual option. I know that there right now is an online form on our commencement website, so please check it out. To every senior watching this, please, 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 your voice matters. Fill out that online form, and then we're going to take that into consideration by we mean the Office of Student Enrollment Development. Because again, I understand that with COVID-19, like right now, our priority is our health, and our priority is making sure that we're prioritizing ourselves, whether it be stepping away from different spaces and making sure that you're healthy. At the end of the day, we need to realize that we need to advocate for our student body. So if students want a commencement, that's if anything until very next year, then we're gonna have to make that happen. At the end of the day, we already have a budget allocated for this commencement ceremony. There's no reason why we can't talk about putting it in the next fiscal year budget to ensure that this can go as planned, because everyone knows the fiscal year budget ends around June and July. But again, I think my biggest thing would be to advocate for students what they want, whether that means having a commencement ceremonies in August, having it September, having it next year, or having it at a completely different location once the governor passes the safer at home passes after April 19th. I think the biggest thing that this administration must do is have those conversations with the Office of Student Enrollment Development. And so whoever it is after, if we're first and second, I'm so happy to give you my point of contact so we can make that happen, because at the end of the day, I think it's like what I said before, we're stronger together, which means if AS can unite with the student campus, we can make things happen.
Thank you, Rose. Leslie?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. So many students have been critical of how the university and AS administration handled the COVID-19 situation, especially in terms of commencement being moved. What are your thoughts on the way university and AS administration handled the COVID-19 situation, and would you have pushed to do commencement virtually?
Thank you. So I personally believe that the decision to postpone the commencement was actually super important for the sake of public health. I do believe, though, that commencement should absolutely be preserved. Commencement or walking across that stage is a culminating moment for a lot of students. And so for them to miss out on it, especially students who are first generation or who had never seen a family member or have never seen a family member graduate themselves, it's really important that they have that experience. And so I stand in solidarity with students who want to preserve this commencement moment. And I'm really glad, thank you, Rose, for sharing all that information, because that's super important for us to know. But see, that's information that students should know as well, that the general population of students should be aware of as well. And as far as the handling of COVID-19, I think preemptive measures to inform students early on as to what's going on will build trust between students and the university. And so I feel moving into the future regarding not just this emergency, but also future emergencies, future emergencies, that the university do a little bit of a better job of keeping students constantly updated. And so they're getting there. In the past, they haven't quite been there, but they're getting there. And so I think if they keep on that path and start to just consistently reach out to students and ensuring that they're aware of the situation, then that trust can be rebuilt.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
I think that the administration did the best thing that was feasible for the sake of public health. I myself am an environmental occupational health major. So a lot of what is going on, I study in my classes every day. And really the most important thing is to flatten the curve, as everyone says. And I truly believe that this online transition was something that was necessary. Again, I think that there may have been more transparency and regular updates before everything came crashing down on us, kind of updates from the CDC, from the California Department of Public Health. However, ultimately, it would have been the same result, but we definitely look forward to being more transparent with our student body and keeping on what our future steps are. In terms of commencement, I think that commencement is a ceremony that students work hard towards possibly their entire lives. We have students working 5 jobs, getting up at 4 a.m. every day to make it to their classes and leave class at 10 p.m. every night. To put that into a virtual environment, I think would be almost shameful, I think, for a lot of the students, because their entire college experience would now be culminating online. And I think it's really important that we listen to our student body. And again, thank you, Rose, for bringing up that resource. I've also posted it a couple times from that website, so I appreciate that, that our students are informed and that the graduation is postponed at a time when it is most convenient for the majority of our student body, so that all of the students have that experience that we've been working towards our entire lives.
Thank you, Rebecca. Mariah?
Okay, unmuted, perfect. So basically, as far as the commencement goes, I definitely agree with the girls saying that there's no reason that we should do virtual, because we didn't do our classes virtual. You know what I mean? They didn't tell us that we can stay at home when we felt uncomfortable driving on the freeway because it's raining, or we don't feel well, or our parents are doing A, B, C, and D. They didn't give us the option to virtually do class. So they can't take away that graduation from these seniors. It's not fair. I definitely believe that it should be postponed to a time that works best for all students and families, because just how the girls mentioned, once again, people are first generation, or, you know what I mean? They have kids, you know, they're 3 kids in and they're finally walking the stage. Their kids are proud of them. Their families are proud of them, and they deserve to have that moment to shine. As far as the COVID-19, I definitely wish that professors, or I guess I can't blame the professors, but CSUN itself was more proactive in this, because I only, out of my 6 classes, only had 1 professor come up with the game plan prior to us closing down. And out of, you know, if it's only 1 out of 6, that's kind of not a great statistic. And I also wish that CSUN would take our safety as seriously as they took our health, because when all of the threats were coming out of shootings, granted, I understand that people say a lot and nothing happens, but at the end of the day, it's not a risk that we should be willing to take, but we have in the past. Thankfully, nothing happened, but it should be treated the same way. So our health is obviously important, but our lives, we have to be alive to be healthy, and they didn't take it as seriously. So that's my take on it.
Right. Thank you, Mariah. Are there any rebuttals? Rose?
I think that I just want to say that I'm extremely happy that we're all kind of on the same fact that, like, we shouldn't wait for an emergency to occur to create these policies. I think that as this generation of students, that we should think about it proactively and strategically. And even though I'm extremely aware that we cannot predict the future, we can definitely protect the students in some shape and some form. And I think that anything can be improved at CSUN. And I think how we react to certain emergencies is definitely one of them.
Thank you, Rose. Leslie?
Yeah, I'm really glad that, yeah, absolutely, that we don't need to wait for an emergency to happen. And also the way it's already happened more than once that CSUN has needed to move their classes onto like an online form because of either shooting threats or wildfire or something happening that prevents students from coming to class. So I feel like a policy that could be proposed to the university is that every syllabus have a section that say, hey, if in the event that our classes will need to be moved to a different setting, here is what's going to happen. That way students, when they sign up for this class and they're reading their syllabus, they know what to expect. Because there are certain classes that are really hurt by the shutdown and are really hurt by the fact that they can't go to their physical classrooms or their physical labs or their physical dance spaces and theater spaces and whatnot. And so that would be a policy that my administration would want to adopt or want to really push forward, because it would really give insight to students and ensure that students and professors know what they're doing, they're prepared, and students know what they're getting into.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
And a lot of this proactive measures that we've all been discussing really stems from collaboration and teamwork with other campus entities. I think one of the basic steps that could have been taken, looking back in this pandemic, is just providing hand sanitizers in every classroom. You know, everybody says wash your hands, but we don't have the resources on campus. We don't have a sink or hand sanitizer in every building, at least, for people to do that. And I think we also have to focus on our mental health. Right now, we have students socially distancing themselves, sitting in isolation, and a lot of students from disadvantaged backgrounds who may not have anybody to talk to, who may be living alone. we need to be confident that we can provide mental health and physical health services for our students and measures to prevent these types of events from happening in the first place.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so we're gonna go into final rebuttals. You have 30 seconds, Rose.
I just wanted to share that my administration, including the academic and mental health procedures, that we also want to take into a look of creating a policy to protect student employment, because I think it's very important to realize that student employment and wages, like, yes, we're protected until April 5th, according to the campus president. What happens after April 5th? Our rent doesn't stop, our bills don't stop. So creating a policy that can somehow protect the student employment, at least till the end of the academic year, would be really important. Again, I don't know if one's already been drafted, but if not, that's something that definitely my administration wants to take into consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, let's move on.
Rose, AB 1460 is a bill that would make CSUN campuses, CSU campuses require students to take one 3-unit ethics studies course as a graduation requirement. If the bill were to fail on the Senate floor, what steps would you make to address the desire of students that think it is critical to have an ethics studies requirement implemented to all CSUs?
Thank you. Can you please repeat the actual question when it starts with if the bill were to fail?
If the bill were to fail on the Senate floor, what steps will you take to address the desire of students that think that it's critical to have an ethics studies requirement implemented to all CSUs?
Thank you. So if the bill were to fail, I will first answer this question with the last thing that I would do is do nothing. I think the first thing is to reevaluate why it failed and what exactly con list they had delivered. I know that right now the CSU wants to vote no on the assembly bill, which I still do not really agree with. And I think that it's really important to highlight why did the bill fail. Is it because of the language? Okay, let's cater our language, let's take our language to be more inclusive if that's the case. But I think besides just re-looking at the actual assembly bill and creating a new one, I think we also need to put more efforts into lobbying and allowing students to understand that even though you may not be physically there in certain CSU campuses to be lobbying, there's a lot of opportunities to share your voice, whether it be via postcards, via email, even video chats and things like that. And I think that a lot of students are unaware of that, or they find out once the deadline has passed. And I think that also it's about, again, educating the rest of the student population, because let's say 2,000 students are extremely excited and strong advocates for the assembly bill, what happens to the rest of the 38,000, you know? And I think it's advocating those students who aren't aware, who are not informed or involved, to really educate themselves and create their own stand on it and then fight with us, because I think it'd be a shame to just let this bill die and not do anything about it.
Thank you, Rose. Mariah?
Okay, so in my opinion, if everything was to fail and they did take that standard away, I would definitely encourage the students to peacefully protest against it, if that's what they want to do, obviously. Just because when we look at our actual, presidents and governors and all of the people in power right now, you can clearly see that if they actually looked into the background of the people that they go against and the things that they're saying, they would have definitely benefited from these types of programs. You know what I mean? Taking the Chicano studies classes, the queer studies classes, the Africana studies classes, all of those, they would have benefited from that and understood the people that they put those stereotypes out about, and the things that they would understand why the things that they say are important and that it's disrespectful, or that it can hurt people. And we probably wouldn't be in as bad of a state that we're in currently if this was actually taken seriously and they weren't trying to take everything away from us. And furthermore, CSUN itself is a melting pot, so there's no reason to take that opportunity to actually understand each other away. Even being in Africana studies classes, I've had many like Latin, I guess you can say, background students in those classes, and we all just seem to really, really find a new care for each other from those classes. So it's not necessary to take it away from us.
Thank you, Mariah. Leslie?
Yeah, ethnic studies changes lives. I have heard from countless students that being able to learn about their culture and their history has really empowered them to be a better student and be a better community member. AP 1460 was something that I really followed closely and researched closely as the former chair of legislative affairs. And while I'm aware of the many concerns that higher education institutions have with this bill, I believe that it is the student voice and demands that matter the most in the discussion of ethnic studies. As president, bills like AB 1460, if it fails, would be at the most importance legislatively for my administration. I plan to give my future chair of legislative affairs more power and more freedom to do casework and really craft advocacy campaigns around bills that students care about. So that would be one of the goals that I would adopt to ensure that bills like AB 1460 are really advocated for on behalf of our students. And also, tangibly, what I could do as president is work with the California State Student Association, their legislative affairs committee that actually works to draft bills, or to work with legislators who develop bills surrounding higher education. And so through my position as president, because presidents gets to serve on the board of directors or on any committees that they like within the California Student Association, that would be something that I could do, and to ensure that the idea of AP 1460 and the spirit behind it is preserved. This has been the hottest issue since I was a freshman. This has been going on for years, and students are upset with Associated students, and rightfully so, because AS really hasn't done what it has needed to do to really tackle this issue. I think they really tried this year, but I think the discussion happened a little bit too late and should have happened a lot sooner. But regardless, I would like to see an administration or be administration that—
We're gonna have to cut you off there. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
Assuming that the AB 1460 would not pass, the first thing I would do is determine why. I would sit down with student leaders across campus and representatives, and of course the the administration, and determine why did this not pass? How do we change the language? How do we meet our assembly to make sure that this assembly bill would represent effectively all of our students' needs, desires, wants? I think a lot of the times we focus too much on what we want, which is what we should be doing as representatives. But if we want to make things work, we need to focus on how we can make things work. I would sit down with the cabinet and sit down with these representatives, and we will work on this together, because like it's been mentioned, it's a hot topic and it's something that's really important to our student body. And I would do everything in order to make sure that we can get this passed in the future.
Thank you, candidates. Are there any rebuttals? Rose?
Thank you. And thinking it's an important part to highlight is the importance of being an active member during the Associate Students Administration and working with the students, not just for the students, and really educating every single member within AS leadership, because it's really great if you are an informed chair or informed president, but how far would that get you if your team members are not informed and not fighting with you? I think it's important to really take a close look on how to work with the Chancellor's Office and finding feasible ways to meet the student needs, as well as having those on-campus conversations and not just at a CSU level at CSSA. Again, I've been part of those conversations and understanding the experience that it's hard, and a lot of it roots from all the miscommunication, misinformation, or even a lack of communication. But somehow we need to figure out how our campus can meet the needs of our students. And again, as I said before, even if it means entering uncomfortable spaces and educating ourselves.
Thank you. Any other rebuttals? Okay, moving on to the next question.
Mariah, campus safety has been an increasing issue as of late. Threats of gun violence, assaults, and sexual batteries have dramatically been on the rise. How would you address this issue, and what measures would you take to improve safety on our campus?
Well, first and foremost, I discussed this with my roommates before actually. Matador Patrol is a great concept, but I definitely believe that we need more of them. And secondly, I do believe that they should be trained differently, because there's been times where I've been leaving the library late at night and I feel too nervous or too like, do I ask them to walk me? Do I, you know what I mean? I feel like I have to approach them, and there'll be a group of 6 of them out there chatting, whatever they're doing. And that's no disrespect towards them saying they're not doing their job, because ultimately we're all grown and we should be able to speak to them. But at the end of the day, they're there to protect us, and they should be willing to ask us, excuse me, you're walking by yourself, you're 4'10". Do you want someone to walk you to your car? Or you know what I mean? And we can kindly decline if that's what we want to do. But I do think it's necessary for them to take that step, because it's their job and it's what they're getting paid for. Secondly, when these threats come out about shootings or different things like that, I do believe it's necessary to up the security on campus and allow us to actually see police outside of our classrooms, or, you know, somebody actually on site. I see the cars, but they're always empty. I don't see any of the police officers around campus. I don't see any of that when those threats come out. And our president of the entire campus will message us telling us that, you know, we're being protected and there's more security, but you don't see any of it. And we need that comfort as students to know that we're safe. So those would be my two main things.
Thank you, Mariah. Rebecca?
A student voice with our campus police. I think that the campus police does a great job of behind the scenes, but students don't know about that, and that causes some of the anxiety and the panic that arises in hard times. We've all experienced, everyone here has experienced some difficult times at CSUN's campus. And I think that we also need to be more prepared. We have to have a campus-wide emergency response systems for fires, shootings, earthquakes, pandemics. And I think that having that student voice with the police department would play a huge role. And to add on to what candidate Murray has mentioned, that our Matador Patrol is out there, but they are not actively participating in their roles. I myself have also walked by myself at night, and it's scary. And to combat that, not only do we need to promote our Matador Patrol, but also invest in possibly some better lighting features at CSUN to make sure that CSUN's not as dark at night as it normally is. We really need to work together. Again, I'm really big on working together because I truly believe that no one person can do everything, and that we really need to hear everybody's voices and everyone's opinions count.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rose?
Please repeat the question.
Sure. Campus safety has been an increasing issue as of late. Threats of gun violence, assaults, and sexual batteries have dramatically been on the rise. How would you address this issue, and what measures would you take to improve safety on our campus?
Thank you. So I would address this issue, I want to say so much, but like I think the basis is transparency and understanding how the department works. But I also want to acknowledge and respect the fact that a lot of people are, from experience, are triggered when they see a person in a suit, and they develop some anxiety or they feel very uncomfortable seeing a police officer. And I don't blame them, again, from my own personal life experience. So I think it's really hard to say we should have policemen outside our classrooms or outside our buildings, because some students may not respond to that in a positive light, and instead that will actually make them regress as a student. And I really, really want to acknowledge that and say that, because I think that the police department does a wonderful job, but I think it's also how they're perceived. But I think perception can be combated with transparency. I've personally worked with the chief of police to create these workshops in a different light outside of a meeting setting. So I would want to bring that back and have the conversation where the chief can explain, like, here's some self-defense classes that you can use if you want to learn how to protect yourself. I think a lot of times that I love the fact that we do rely on other people, but I think a lot of times that we can take proactive measures to protect ourselves. I think it'd be really cool to look in some way of getting donations or funding to potentially get, let's say, pepper spray, right? Or something to give to the students. There's not necessarily a weapon like a knife, but something to, like, okay, someone's chasing me, someone's following them. I'm tiny. Am I going to be able to outrun them? I don't know, but I need to get myself into a safe building. And I think like having those conversations, educating people on how to take precautions and how to respond in a manner that just doesn't invoke just panic, you know? And I think that also having conversations with maybe faculty and senate and seeing what we can do as CSUN students to advocate for earlier classes. Not that I'm saying incidents do not happen in the morning, because they sure as hell do, but according to statistics, like, there's a lot more incidents that happen in the dark. So if we can't get funding for more lighting, maybe having those conversations with faculty senate and
I'm gonna have to cut you off there. Leslie?
So lack of transparency is really what results in confusion among students. That then promotes distrust, and then campus entities who are working to keep us safe can't really reach us anymore because now we just don't trust them. And that's rightfully so for most students. Paired with intergenerational trauma of communities of color and the police, that divide just gets even more exacerbated. And I disagree with the notion that we should have police officers scattered around our campus. That's really triggering for a lot of students, especially students who have, students of color, like I just said. But anyway, the bottom line is that students just want to be told what's going on in situations of emergencies, and they want to be told consistently and told early. There's no reason why a student needs to find out about a campus emergency via Twitter. Like, that's ridiculous. How is Twitter, faster at getting out information than our own campus police who are designed to help us? But anyway, campus safety is a lot more than just campus police as well. As Rebecca mentioned, it's about more lighting on our campus. I have heard from students personally who feel very fearful about walking from campus to the dorms and whatnot. So really creating pathways that are more lit up is one simple solution that we can bring relatively quickly if the right pressure is applied, but also ensuring that our escort services are improved. So Matador Patrol, which has already been mentioned, but really empowering them and ensuring that they have more volunteers or the resources that they need to gather more volunteers to ensure that students can essentially help other students. And lastly, another thing that has been brought to my attention was the surrounding areas and crosswalks and really the unsafety of students who want to cross the street and whatnot to get to campus or get back home. And that would be another form of safety issue that could be addressed by Associated students by advocating through our local city government to bring another crosswalk or some other form of safety measures that keep our students safe in that respect.
Thank you, Leslie. Does anyone have anything to add? Mariah?
First and foremost, I do want to acknowledge that I understand your guys' concerns as far as the stereotypes against police officers, and clearly I am a person of color as well, so I do understand that, you know, dynamic of fear or anxiety, and it does make perfect sense. However, I think that first and foremost, this isn't the LAPD particularly. We're literally speaking about CSUN police, and they have, as far as I've experienced with them, they have set themselves apart, and they don't treat me the way I've been treated by others. And I think it would be wrong to stereotype that and make it seem like they're just these big, scary people that are going to hurt us. And in addition, if we were to make more events where people can experience the police officers and see what we're actually dealing with, they would be more comfortable. So I definitely think how the girls were saying transparency and communication, put that at the forefront and we can clear out the anxiety. And then furthermore, in addition to the pepper spray that Rose mentioned, we could also do something like whistles. You know, like you said, you can't run or anything. Maybe you can grab someone's attention nearby. So those are just a few thoughts.
Thank you, Mariah. Anyone else? Leslie?
Yeah, I would just have to say that I disagree. I think at the end of the day, if a student is embedded with some kind of trauma with positions of authority, then we shouldn't exacerbate that at all at any cost. As far as wanting to mend that relationship, one thing that can be done is through Associated Students is facilitate relationships, or I guess facilitate events or connections between campus entities that students already feel comfortable with. So things like Project Date that focuses on sexual assault, or other campus related orgs that students already feel comfortable with, and try to find an avenue through there to build that relationship. But I think just having a police officer there and saying, hey, he's nice, so we're gonna get along, isn't enough for students who feel so deeply a really, not fear, but just really not positively associated feelings towards police.
Thank you, Leslie. Anyone else? Rose?
Thank you. I also want to just share that, I agree with what Leslie was saying when I brought up the fact that, at the end of the day, some people have this bubble, and just because your bubble hasn't been popped with the perception of something doesn't mean that your experience is everyone's experience. And this goes either way. But I just did want to share that I think it's really important for IAS to have a relationship with campus police and advocating for implementation of being educated, whether that means including in our U100 class presentations that the Associate Students already does, include a slide or PowerPoint with the chief that explains, hi, this is how we can protect ourselves. This is what we do in case of emergency, without showcasing a scary gun shooting video, you know? And I think, again, that as student leaders, we can go above and beyond to create these relationships with the police, with the chief, especially because they are open to it, which is really great, which is not something that a previous chief was. So I think it's very doable.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mariah?
Just quickly, I understand what Leslie's saying about the scary part, and I definitely think it would be a conversation that needs to be had and something that can be drafted into something else. But I definitely agree to disagree, but I do think that it would be necessary to have on-campus police during those times of fear. But like you said, you know, it might not be the best idea, but I do think it would be a great conversation and something to develop, because maybe we don't need them suited up, but at least knowing they're there, you know, just an idea.
Thank you, Mariah. Anyone else? All right, let's move on.
Rebecca, the relationship between the AS president and the Senate has often been characterized as tense due to the opposing views. As president, what do you do to mend these relationships?
So First of all, I believe that AS and Senate, the president and Senate, doesn't have a broken relationship to start with. So as president, if elected, I would start off by first building a good relationship. I think our beauty is in our differences and that we can all work together to really represent effectively our students. You don't need to fix what's not broken, not yet. And I will strive to do everything in my power to make sure that we continue with a good relationship. I will sit down regularly with the senators and other representatives to ensure that everybody's voice is heard, and I will embrace differences of opinions, because I know that I effectively cannot represent our campus, and that's what our slate is for. That's what my slate personally is. It's very diverse. We have students from all different types of clubs, all different types of organizations, backgrounds, different communities, and I think that we can learn from each other and communicate with each other, and in that way we build respect and we have strong teamwork.
Thank you, Rebecca. Leslie?
Yeah, I think it would be naive to say that the relationship isn't tense. It's tense. Unfortunately, that has a lot to do with the lack of communication or communication breakdown. I believe in the philosophy that a leader is someone who guides, not dictates. The AS president and vice president exist to guide the Senate and empower them to achieve their collective goals of AS leadership. It's not a versus, it's not a you against me. It should be a collaborative effort to ensure that we're all working together to get goals done or get work done. I think there's a gross misunderstanding that the AS president simply by title owns the Senate or that believes that the Senate should do what they want. And I think that there's also a kind of a back and forth misunderstanding of what the Senate can do. And so that would be something that early on would need to be discussed and would need to be really brought down to specific details so everyone is on the same page and everyone can do what they need to do. I believe that in order to ensure profound victories and change, the AS president is responsible for bringing people together. And so I think it rests on the AS president to do that and to really bring people together to work together, because at the end of the day, you are the leader, you are the person who everyone goes to and looks at when a problem or when something falls apart. And so you need to be there to unite everyone.
Thank you, Leslie. Rose?
That's a question. Thank you.
The relationship between the AS president and the Senate has often been characterized as tense due to the opposing views. As president, what would you do to mend this relationship?
Thank you. It makes me kind of sad to think that students feel like the relationship between president and Senate is tense, because from my experience, and this is not just talking about leadership experience, but in AS in general, from the 3 different departments I've been a part of, it's always been home. And it's always been a safe space for students to voice their opinion and to agree to disagree, because again, that's the beauty of having so many intelligent minds in one room, is to educate your mindset and to broaden your perspective. I think it's really important to understand that as a president, you are not the boss. You are a leader that's there to pull out the leader from everyone else. And I think that it's sad to see that this past year that many students have let go of their positions because of the workspace. So I will make an effort to make sure that students don't feel intimidated in that space. I will want to make sure that students don't feel like they can't say something because they're going to be reprimanded, you know, whether it be at a Senate meeting or in the office. And I think that's really important. And I will advocate to my end that like, it's really, really hard to say when you've made a mistake. But I think as president, you have to be able to say, I shouldn't have talked to you in that tone, and I do apologize. I recognize that. Let's figure out another way to have this conversation. And I think it takes a skill of maturity to do that. And I think that through my experience at CSUN, I've been able to hone that and scale it. And I still have my rough days. What can I say? I'm Latina, I have a harsh tone. I fit that stereotype 100%. But I do think it's really important that that self-awareness that a leader can have can take them a long way.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. Mariah?
Okay, so being that this would be one of my first experiences in the Associated Students, I wouldn't know about the Senate versus President, vibe that's been going on. However, I do believe that just in a team in general, because ultimately that is what it is, you need to realize that everybody's on the same playing field and we're all on the same team. We're working towards the same goals, whether it be a different opinion. We're all trying to make everyone happy. We're all trying to satisfy a need. of some sort. So I definitely would think that it's a big deal to kind of, just how the girls said, bouncing off of their ideas. You can't just think that, oh, I'm the president, so I'm the end all be all. You know what I mean? It's about more than just you. It's about the other people involved, and it's about the students. So if we can all keep our mind on the right thing and keep the students at the center, we can figure it out. And furthermore, if we can all be mature enough to say, you know what, I don't agree with what you said, but if that's what the majority wants, what do I need to do to help? Rather than trying to be like, well, oh, we're not doing it my way, I'm out. You know, that's not really what it's about to be on a team. So if everyone can just kind of focus in on what our goal is, we'll be fine. And furthermore, if there's someone that truly does feel like they're not being heard and they do strongly disagree and there is a problem, that's when you take it to a one-on-one and have that conversation and figure out how you can figure out how you can fit everyone's way in, or figure out the best way to do it.
Thank you, candidates. Are there any rebuttals? Rose?
I would just like to say that, one, retweet to what y'all said, but two, I think the really important part is to acknowledge that there's also a vice president in the mix of this. And I think that AS thrives on partnerships. And let's say that a senator may not feel comfortable talking to the president for X, Y reasons. There's always a vice president to be there as a support system. And that doesn't mean to have a personal agenda, but that just means that like AS should have open doors where you can have that conversation and allow your emotions to run through and then realize, okay, let's get back to business. Because I said it in my opening statement, I'll say it again. It's not about me, it's about them. It's about the students that you chose to run for and advocate for. And at the end of the day, like when things get rough, and they will, remember why you began this journey in the first place.
Okay. Are there any more rebuttals? Leslie?
Yeah, I love hearing all of this. I think it's so important that leaders go into leadership positions without their ego or without their own personal wants and their own personal, things that they want out of this position that have nothing to do with serving the students. I'm really glad to hear that from all of the ladies here, so thumbs up. But also to talk about my own tangible visions on how to really mend this relationship or be an effective leader would be to really develop positive relationship with senators early on. Like Rose said, AS is meant to be a family, and just like your family, you have disagreements, but you still work together and you're still creating a relationship that is good, not one that is hostile. So things that I would like to do is just have one-on-ones with senators. It's only 23 of them. You can do it. Really understanding what they need and what their goals are and how I can help them achieve.
Bob, that was time. Any more rebuttals? Rebecca?
I think a leader should not be feared nor loved. I think it should be respected. And I think if we're all coming together to achieve a common goal, which is to represent the students, we can't be thinking about forming a family. We have to be thinking about our goal, which is to serve the students. I would, again, to repeat what I mentioned, the first thing I mentioned was that I want to start off that community of respect from the start. And I want to be able to tell the administration what I expect, and I hope that I be told what they are expecting of me.
Okay. Are there any more rebuttals? Okay, moving on.
Rose. Some student employees were told that they'd be paid up until April 5th and would then be up for reevaluation for hiring due to COVID-19 leading to university departments being closed. These students are now facing job insecurity. Without these jobs, some students will no longer be able to pay for housing or for food. How would you advocate for students who are facing situations like this?
Yeah, thank you. So I think I just mentioned that earlier before how, and I'll probably reiterate everything I said, but like my rent doesn't stop April 5th. My groceries don't stop April 5th. My phone bill, my everything. And I'm a student who pays a lot of things out of pocket. And so I definitely relate to these students, especially the first generation students who are like, I'm barely making it. And like, why, like, I have to add this on top of it. I think that, again, it's a little too late right now because I'm not in a position of privilege to create a policy. But if I were, even as a student at large, I'm already working with a lot of USU Board of Director members right now to create some kind of draft to protect students. And I would want to continue that process because I don't think it's fair to tell a student, you're good until April 5th, but after that, we'll see. Because at the end of the day, like, no one predicted this. No one expected this. But if I were a person who was in a in a position of power and privilege, I would definitely advocate that, like, we already allocated this budget, the student's stipend, the student's salary for the whole academic year. What harm would we do if we continue giving that to the student? We're not doing any harm. So I think because the budget already has been allocated and CSUN will not be losing money, that we should be paying students the normal hours they'd be getting if school was open. I think it's also fair to say, well, students are working for it. I'm like, well, then as supervisors, and a lot of staff members and faculty may be watching this, create different tasks and jobs that can help students work at home online, whether that means creating a virtual or online event, like help them flourish and use this space to have a creative outlet. And I think it's also important to recognize that with COVID-19, the thing is we can't predict anything that's going to happen. So I think the biggest thing is like remembering that in all this madness to prioritize students and understand that like there's still resources out there. The food pantry is actually still open Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Just putting it out there. Please utilize that. The food pantry is not only for you, but it can be used for how many people are housed in your home. So if I say that I have a family of 4, I could
Rose,
go to
cut you off there. Thank you.
Thank
Leslie?
you.
The question, please. Could you repeat the question?
Some student employees were told that they would be paid up until April 5th and would then be up for reevaluation for hiring due to COVID-19 leading to closures of university departments. These students are now facing job insecurity. Without these jobs, some students will no longer be able to pay for food or for housing. How would you advocate for students who are facing situations like this?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's incredibly cruel for the university to say that up until a certain point, students will be guaranteed pay, and then suddenly after that, it's, well, good luck. You can't do that to students. Students power a lot of our facilities on campus, and they're responsible for the overall production of things on campus. And so you can't just cut off their income. It isn't fair, especially with students who have costs that they need to pay, or like myself, me and my dad are the only 2 people who work in our family. And so we need to support our families, right? And I'm sure there's other students who maybe they're the only one who's working in their household. And so the university should essentially give that money to students. Like Rose mentioned, they already have a payroll set or a set amount of money already allocated for students. And so it doesn't make any sense to not just give them the money, considering that this situation is so unprecedented. It'll really help out students, and I think it's just overall just so cruel to just take away their money at a time where things are being closed and students can't work elsewhere, and it's just that money is already there for them. They should be allowed it.
Thank you, Leslie. Mariah?
So definitely how the girls were saying, CSUN isn't losing any money. They're essentially not losing any sleep over this, and I think it's unfair that the students are getting cut off their pay after 2 weeks from today. You know what I mean? That doesn't even give you enough time to find a new job, because by the time you're processed into a job system, it takes about 2 weeks in the first place. So that's already extremely unfair. I definitely admire my job's way of how they went about things. I work at a coffee shop. I'm sure you can guess where. But basically, my location got shut down because it was a cafe, and I immediately was transferred out into a drive-thru. And I feel like CSUN should be able to make those accommodations as well in some sort of way. I know that CSUN's name holds a lot of weight around this area, and I'm sure that people have networking that they could have pulled some strings to allow people to go somewhere and work, or do something to be able to give them their money and at least continue their pay until the school year would have been up in May. Because at the end of the day, April isn't when school would have ended anyways. And like the girl said, the budget has already been set for those students to be paid, so there's no reason to just cancel the pay in April when they were going to be working up until about May, and some of them through summer. So there was no reason to do that. I definitely think that somebody needs to be doing something to figure out what these students are going to do, because nobody's bills are stopping. And if that's the case and the bills do stop, okay, then it's understood. But as of right now, my rent is still due on the 1st. So.
Thank you, Mariah. Rebecca?
It's truly heartbreaking how this pandemic really changes lives, all of our lives. And I think the first thing that we should be doing, instead of reevaluating whether these students will have jobs, we have to reevaluate how we can accommodate to these students so that they can keep their jobs. I highly doubt that there's jobs that just absolutely cannot 100% be done from home, or at least with a safe distance. Students need to eat. We're trying to protect our public health, but there's a scale, like a pyramid, where if we don't have our basic needs, food, shelter, water, clothing, we're not going to be able to be successful in anything. So we really need to prioritize finding new ways to ensure that these students have their jobs and are getting their paychecks as expected for the rest of the year. Thank you.
Rebecca. Does anyone else have anything to add? Rose?
I think it's important to also acknowledge that, again, I keep talking about constant theme of transparency because that's really important for my administration. But I think that CSUN is losing money because there's no constant revenue of food sales, whether that be in the dorms, whether it be on campus and Sierra Center, things like that. Also housing, rightfully so, like they should not be charging students housing if they're not being housed there. But I think, again, it's important to see that if students' salaries are based on a TUC sale, such as dining and dorms or housing, then the campus needs to be transparent and say that. Because then students are kind of lost and just get told no. And like, okay, if we're getting told no, why? And then we can find out, we can try to advocate, okay, here's the why, let's figure out solutions. And I think it's just really important to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Rose. Mariah?
When I say CSUN isn't losing money, I don't mean literally, like obviously they're losing money because we're not there. But my point is that their bank account isn't dying. You know what I mean? They're still going to be able to eat. They're still going to be able to take care of themselves. Just a prime example, since I've been here, the parking pass has gone up hundreds of dollars each year. So we know that they have their money. We know that they're able to take care of themselves and that CSUN is able to continue after this crash, I guess you can say. So I don't literally mean that they're not losing money, but that they will be okay. And if our rent isn't paid, we'll be on the streets. That's what I mean.
Thank you, Mariah. Rose?
Just real quickly, the parking pass has not got up a couple hundreds of dollars in the past years, just to clarify. And then DPS did send out a reimbursement opportunity window. It was timed, which I wish it wasn't timed, but at least that the DPS was willing to return students some money, just putting it out there for anyone watching.
Thank you, Rose. Anyone else? Rebecca?
Yeah, to add on, I believe the date was even extended. So far, parking has reimbursed over $1 million to the students. So please, general note to everybody, please get those parking passes reimbursed so that you can save your money and help yourself where you need it most right now.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, let's move on.
Now we're going to move on to the next portion of our debate, where the vice president candidates now have the chance to answer some questions. The same rules from before still applies, but only for the vice presidents have the chance to rebuttal here.
So we're going to ask for the presidential candidates to turn off your cameras and the vice presidents to turn on their cameras.
Okay, thank you. The first question is directed to Alex. What issues do CSUN students confront on a daily basis? How would you use your role as AS Vice President to support their needs?
Hold on a second. Try muting yourself, Alex. There you go.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aquino, and my pronouns are she, her, and theirs. I feel like I think the issue that people actually the most is food insecurity. I actually work with the food pantry together to actually donate money to them and trying to find ways to actually help our students. But the only issue they have is to expand the food pantry. With expanding the food pantry, we're not able to provide more resources for students. And also for mental health, I know it's a big issue also for LGBT community, but also for other students too. That we're not able to provide the best resources because we don't have enough counselors to provide services. Maybe have like collaboration with the Cluck Center and the counseling services together to provide more for mental health. And I feel like, sorry, I'm just nervous.
Okay.
I feel providing and develop those programming to actually to renew them and talk to the people who really need them, the students. We are here for students. I'm here as just representing them, but like I want to talk to them and see what's your needs, what I'm able to provide for you. If without even hearing the students out and come to my office and say, hey, this is what I need, I'm not able to provide the resources.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Dion?
So I think the vice president candidates have to unmute themselves. There's some weird thing going on. Yeah, so just unmute yourself and mute yourself when you're done talking.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Okay. What issues do CSUN students confront on a daily basis? And how would you use your role as vice president to support their needs?
I think that as CSUN students, we face a variety of issues on a daily basis. I think one of the biggest is finding a sense of belonging, and finding out where you really feel like you belong. Feeling connected to the campus is definitely very, very important. I think that the university administration, the university faculty and staff, and associated students could do a much better job at connecting with the students, and building platforms that students can then work with one another and work with the university on, I guess, feeling connected to the university. As the vice president of Associated Students, I would definitely make sure that I am in spaces, physically in spaces, and physically my administration is physically sitting down, having these conversations of helping students feel a sense of belonging on campus, but also making sure that they understand that their voices are being heard, and being very transparent on what my role is, and I guess, as Rose mentioned, what her role is as the AS vice president and president.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Hello. As you said, my name is Nicholas Morrison Welch. I'm running with Rebecca Grinberg, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I believe, like Dion said, like Alex said, that there are a plethora of issues that are facing students. One of them being financial security, especially now in this unprecedented crisis. There's housing insecurity, food insecurity, and especially so, something that I've dealt with is access to mental health resources. Something that CSUN has really struggled with is dealing with the capacity of students who need and require and are asking for these services. And it's something that I feel they have been inadequately able to provide. I think that one thing that we can really work on is getting ourselves out there, getting awareness to these programs. We have programs set up to help build community, to help provide for food stability, as well as resources for housing stability, but they don't advocate them like they should. And I know that there's some concern like, oh, if we advocate them, then, you know, too many students will take advantage of them and will run out. And my philosophy is, if you have a resource that you are taking money from students to provide, you should do everything in your power to give that back to students and provide it to as many students as possible. And so I would really work hard on making sure that students are not only aware of the resources that we have, but growing them as well in capacity so they can really serve students.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals or further comments? Leon?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. I think that one thing that's very important, especially with COVID-19 going on, is that we are providing resources. I think that is a problem that the university has, is not necessarily showing the resources that we have, but I also think that this year, there are people who are sitting in positions within Associated Students that are wanting to advocate for resources, but we don't know about these resources. I think it's very important that we really take the time to kind of look at ourselves and say, what are we doing that we could be doing? How can we step it up just a little bit in order to really be transparent for the people that will end up watching this?
Thank you. Alex?
I feel right now what's happening in the situation. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. What happened with the situation right now is very delicate. I feel many people are just struggling with, like, how can I pay rent? How can I provide this for my family? And able to provide the resources. We have the resources. We just need to provide them more, maybe more collaboration with associated students, because we are in unity together. And how you said, Dion, like, we need to create that unity together, so able to expand more our resources, because we have great resources on campus. And I feel creating like an emergency planning where, like, administration and also bring other students to create this planning, because without the students and the needs, how can even provide them to hurt them? You know what I mean?
Are there any more rebuttals or further comments? Okay, moving on.
Dion, what are your thoughts on the current AS and CSUN administration? What do you believe could be improved?
So my current thoughts, I guess, on the current AS, I'll start with AS and then I'll go to the CSUN administration. I believe that the current AS administration is very disconnected from the student body. I believe that the students are not familiar with Associated Students at all, and so don't feel as if these are the people that they elected to be their student voice for whatever reason. And I know there was a record voting turnout, but for whatever reason, students are not happy. I believe that there's a lot of people in different positions and not necessarily just the executive board or the executive cabinet, I should say, but there are a lot of people who are in different positions that, again, are not connected with the students, that are not aware of what issues the schools are being, that our students are being faced with. So I believe that it's very important that we get to know our students. I've had the privilege of being able to sit in different rooms with different CSUN students, a variety of student leaders, and students who are not leaders, and really understand what they're going through. I think the CSUN administration, I mean, it's tough to say because they're rebuilding right now is how I feel like. I feel like I've sat in so many associate vice president interviews, and not necessarily interviews, but open forums, I should say. And I have seen that they're looking for certain things, but because there's only about 3 students that'll sit in there consistently, they're not really getting a student voice, which then ultimately they just have to make a decision, and then they only have 1 student representative. So it's kind of just like there's no real student voice in the administration.
Thank you, Dion. Nicholas?
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. What are your thoughts on the current AS and CSUN administration? What do you believe could be improved?
So I'm actually a member of the current AS administration. I'm a senator for the College of Health and Human Development. And one thing that I've really appreciated as part of the current administration is the real focus and push that they've had on making students accountable and getting us out there. A constant struggle that AS faces is being recognized by students, having students be aware of who we are and what we're doing. That's something that every administration will face, and it is a challenge that isn't unique to CSUN. We're always fighting to get ourselves out there. I think one way to improve AS would be to reinvent some of the current cabinet positions, empowering them to do what they really need to do to make a difference on campus, as well as getting senators out into their colleges. I know that there are some senators, and I'm not talking about anyone in particular, past or present, that do not know their deans or have a strong relationship with their deans. And they do not know the different chairs of their departments or have a strong relationship. And so I think that we really need to be pushing our leaders to have a public face, to be in those physical spaces, as candidate Turner said before. I think that our current administration, there are definite improvements that they can make. I think that they are not as responsive to the student body as we wish that they would be. I think that there is a genuine effort, but that they can continue to take a step forward. I have been a part of Associate Vice President searches for a new Vice President of Research and Sponsored Programs, and I've attended several, I think almost 7 of those meetings. And so I'm doing my part to make sure that students are being heard, but as Vice President, I could do more, and I want to do more. And that's how I would help change the face of the administration.
Thank you, Nicholas. Alex?
Hello, I'm going to be transparent. I will be honest with everybody. I'm part for the Senate. Right now, I'm the Center for Arts and Media and Communication for my vision for Associated Students and rebuilding a strong, transparent, accessibility advocacy for students. My focus is to have a strong team working with my future senators, empower and accomplish their ideas, and also be a mentor for for LGBT Center, for everybody who always come to me, and always I let them to know that I've been heard and no ideas. Everybody can have wonderful ideas and we can provide them. I will work with Leslie to make sure we have serving the students with adaptable programming. So maybe like working more with the Senate and make them actually to improve them, to actually being heard, to actually like, hey, it's not a dumb idea. It actually can work, you know? Like Associated students, my time during my time on office, I want to help the administration to create many different plan or actions to students to feel safe, like right now in the moment they need. Furthermore, for campaigning goals is my creating my fellowship for undocumented DACA students and establish more scholarship for students that can face financial needs. Because we have money and a way, but we need to actually balance it, give back to our students of various population. As Vice President, I want to work with the Senate and Cabinet to create strong leadership for CSUN community, not to offer only to CSUN for their previous future careers. And I hope I can reach out the goals. Thank you.
Alex. Are there any additional comments? Yes, Dion?
I think it's an accountability that goes both ways. I believe that if the president and the vice president are not doing their job, then it's not necessarily the senators' jobs to kind of check them, but to check people into Associated Students. We have to remember the AS's mission statement is to be the primary advocate for the students. I think that it's really cool to hear that from the actual senators. Hi, Nick. Hi, Alex. I think it's really great to hear from both of them and see how they're feeling, but I also ultimately think that Project Red will ensure that everyone goes above and beyond their duties within Associated Students.
Thank you, Dion. Alex?
As senator right now, like, I actually want to be there for the senators also and provide their ideas to come together. It's only just the administration, but we also, as vice president, like Leslie and I, we need to actually provide them with that right way to actually go and communicate with their deans and do the duties that we have to do, because many students just like after they come like months before, like after the other struggle, they go as midterms and tests and they come discouraged about becoming a senator. Like they discourage themselves what's the goal for them near in the future. And I want to establish more that relationship. I want to create harmony together. Like I actually want to create a family. It's not a family also, but I want to have the sense they can count on me too, because I'm very honest and I want everyone to work together as a team. And I hope we come dedicated as a team together, my slate.
Thank you, Alex. Any other comments? All right, let's move on.
This question was submitted to our Instagram from a CSUN student. Nicholas, in what ways do you think you can make the deaf community more involved in the events at CSUN?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think that there are many barriers that students have faced with, or AS has faced with interacting with the deaf community because lots of other students have interacted with them. I think that AS needs to have dedicated interpreters for all our events. We need to provide more access and make students provide resources and make sure that students are aware that AS will help fund to have interpreters at all their events. I know that through branches at AS, like Outdoor Adventures, it's possible to organize groups if the deaf community wanted to go out on trips specifically for them. And I think that we need to pull every community that has been disadvantaged or faces differences that we may not be able to experience or replicate, that we need to bring them into the fold and make sure that their voices are being heard and make sure that their ideas and their wants are being expressed through AS. And so I think that going out into the spaces where they exist and being part of their community and taking a step back and saying, like, I want to see through your eyes and walk in your shoes is a way that AS can be a part of that community. And once we do that, we'll be able to represent them and their wishes and interact with people from all spaces in a more intimate way, because that's what AS is for.
Thank you, Nicholas. Alex.
Hello, you have a great point, Nicholas. I feel like working for the LGBT community, we have the Coffee Knife and Deaf Fest in a way, like we trying to combine the community together. But our job and also the senator job too is to make a great connection to the college and make what do you need. Maybe we can provide more events. Maybe we can provide more interpreters. But the one thing we need to hear what the people need. And also I feel like for events that are going to happen, we need to provide training for students, at least know the minimum for deaf language, because I've been having that very also my work too. Like people come to the events and I don't know how to communicate and make them feel safe and welcome environment. So I feel like administration, you should have something like providing us, maybe like other workers as well, like some type of ESL, you know what I mean? I'm just nervous.
It's okay. Thank you, Alex. Dion.
Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let me just start off by saying that we have the second best school in the country, right behind the university, which is all hard of hearing. So I think that's pretty amazing. Shout out to CSUN. I think that events like the Deaf Queer Fest are very, very important. I know that being the president of the Black Leadership Council, we actually have CSUN Black Signers that had a plethora of events for the deaf community, and we make sure that a majority of our events, we work very hard to make sure are accessible. Rose is a part of a sorority whose philanthropy is based on the Star Key of Hearing Foundation. And she has been able to educate me a lot on the importance of the deaf community. It's important to have our leaders participate in NCOD events that every student is invited to, and members part of NCOD feel included in our programs.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals or further comments? All right. That concludes the first half of the debate. We will now take a 10-minute break. Presidential candidates will be placed on a separate Zoom room with their vice presidents. Feel free to discuss policy, use a bathroom, or get a snack. We'll see you all in 10 minutes.
So let's go to the rooms. Oh, can you all join your rooms?
Mute.
Yeah, I'm muted.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone join the rooms. All right, Calvin and my committee members, stop recording and then just start the recording over again. We can take a break at this portion so it's not a super long recording, I guess. All right, let's bring everyone else back.
Oh, no.
All right, hello. You can all talk now if you want to talk.
I'm gonna
walk around. Thank you, Patrick.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Is it too late to submit a question for the president?
Yes, it is, unfortunately.
Oh, no. It's okay.
Yeah, you can stop recording, Calvin. So during the second half, you can start recording again.
Marvin, where are you guys?
All right, are we all good? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're good? Okay. We're going to test something first. Richard, can you try muting one of them? Try muting Rose. Rose, can you speak? You unmuted.
Hello.
Okay. Richard, try muting Rebecca.
Hello.
Rebecca, can you speak?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you can unmute and remute them. You're good? Okay. So we're going to start now. Welcome back, candidates. This is part 2 of the Spring 2020 Associated Student Selections debate. This portion will consist of questions submitted by the Sundial, and these questions will be directed only to the presidents. Just as a refresher, you'll have 2 minutes to answer the original question asked. Once everyone has answered the original question, you will now have 1 minute for a rebuttal. Once everyone has had a chance for rebuttal, you will have 30 seconds for a final rebuttal. Let's begin.
Leslie, CSUN students are charged an AS fee of $107 each semester, which raises $4 every fall semester. According to the AS Code of Finance, it is designed to support campus-wide programs and activities which supplement and enriches student educational experiences. This in turn totals an $8 million budget. How do you intend to allocate that money to benefit current and future students?
Thank you. So our slate is committed to the idea that student dollars matter. And so the allocation of these funds should definitely go to services and programs that students benefit the most from. As far as how I would decide how they would be allocated, that rests in the power of the Senate. And I believe that the Senate, as representatives of their different campus communities, know best on how to allocate different funds. And that includes adding more to what is allocated to them or taking away some of the funds that have been requested. I believe that the Finance Committee does a good job at making recommendations, but at the same time, it is the job of student elected leaders to really decide and how they intend to serve their communities through these funds. I think our AS should look into more sustainable forms of funding. During my time at the California State Student Association, I've got to know how different AS or ASIs or student governments are formed throughout the state, and they have more sustainable forms of funding to their AS that don't just solely come from student fees. So they have things where they generate revenue through their AS so that they have another pool from which they can pull money from to create services and programs that benefit students. And so I feel that CISA and AS should definitely look into an alternative like that. One of the things that was talked about was having a ropes course on our campus that could be rented out. That would be definitely something that my administration would like to continue those conversations and continue that research as one form of where AS can make money, so that way we're not constantly asking for students for more funds and taking money out of their tuition.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
Thank you. So I think we need to look at the budget holistically, really see where the resources are being needed and how we can use them best. So of course, we've talked about insecurity, so food insecurities, work insecurities, job insecurities, housing insecurities. We first really need to focus on providing those basic needs for our students. And of course, we also need to focus on, like Leslie said, revenue producing sources. So we actually do have revenue producing sources on campus through outdoor adventures, through Big Show. Those are all places where we receive money from and we are able to put back into the system. Now, Vice Presidential candidate Nicholas Morrison Welch actually visited different ropes courses around in Oregon, and we are looking at how we can implement that ropes course to be put on campus and best motivate our students to take advantage of that and also use that as a revenue producing source as well. I think it'd be very beneficial if looking forward, we always look at our budget holistically and see where we can improve the lives of our students, past, present, and future, because as representatives, that's who we are. We are representing everybody.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rose?
Can you please repeat the question?
CSUN students are charged an AS fee of $107 each semester, which raises $4 every fall semester. According to the AS Code of Finance, it is designed to support campus-wide programs and activities which supplement and enriches students' educational experiences. This in turn totals an $8 million budget. How do you intend to allocating that money to benefit current and future students?
Well, thank you. I think that one, we kind of need to check back in and understanding like the code on finance is not at all times student friendly. And I think that we need to educate students on how to read this. If I'm a freshman or a transfer student who walks in and you give me this lengthy document, like how am I supposed to interpret this, right? So I think that we should first start off by like educating students on how the budget works and being more transparent. I think that a lot of times we make a decision and we skip the steps on how we got there. And I think that we owe it to the students to include that kind of transparency. Whether it be like, okay, we're increasing the budget for AS Productions Big Show. Why are we giving money to a concert? Well, a concert costs money. A stage could potentially double in a year or not. So like, because of that, we need to be realistic of like keeping up with the times and understanding that everything is going to be evolving and understanding how the finances work. I think we also need to be wary about like how we spend the money for ourselves. I think that as associate students, like we shouldn't be stingy with our money and we shouldn't be putting in resources as like, okay, let's go on this luxurious retreat when we can have a really great retreat on campus and get everything that we need from the retreat and utilize that money elsewhere. And a lot of times I think is empowering the students and encouraging them to ask questions. I think it's beautiful when students ask questions as a way to understand, not necessarily as a way to showcase doubt or not trusting someone. I think it's just, hey, let's educate with the power of why, you know? And I think that highlighting the the different departments that do provide a lot of revenue, for example, like the Children's Center, is also something that we can make a better effort in informing the students, like, hi, this is what we do and this is what you could potentially sign up for, and explaining the steps why, and not waiting till the last minute. Because I know a lot of students struggle with like, well, I applied for this funding for this club and organ, I didn't get back until 2 days before my deadline for this activity that I want to do. And I think we need to cut that from the beginning and actually take time.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. Mariah?
Okay, so if I understood the question correctly, the way that I would allocate the budget would definitely be towards more health-based things, not just like food and whatnot, but literally like mental health. Like for example, at the, what is it called, the counseling service, I'm not sure like how much we could pull, you know what I mean, throughout that type of a thing, but you can only get up to 8 services. And I can confidently say that I need more than 8 services. So mental health would definitely be something I would like to, you know, put something towards. And then as far as health, like actual health of, you know, food and stuff, and I do know that there are programs and whatnot, but I would definitely like to put more money into that so that our resources can be put out more often. Because like I mentioned before, that's something that I really, really feel strongly about just throughout this entire experience and throughout the entire campaign, is getting those resources out there. Because like I mentioned, this is my 3rd year and there's so many new resources that have been present since freshman year that I just learned about months ago. So I definitely want to get those things out there and promote health like above all else, because if we're not healthy, we can't really focus in school and we won't feel that motivation. I want to put more motivation into the events that I see on campus so that students can feel motivated about going to class, finishing school, graduating, actually performing well, rather than just kind of going through the motions of a college student. And, you know, you got the basic grades to graduate, but you could have went above and beyond if you were in the right health state.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals or further comments? Rose?
Thank you. I can talk. Okay. I just wanted to point out that UCS, or University Counseling Service, actually does not have a cap number of sessions. We recently changed that a few years ago, just putting it out there. But I do think, and I echo what is being said about putting more resources into mental health, whether that means creating an event, or if there's already an event within another campus partner, partnering up with them and seeing what we can do. Like if the USU is hosting something for Mental Awareness Month, okay, how can we as AS join forces to make it even stronger? And I think a lot of times, like, we're so eager to create something new when we don't take a second to breathe, look around and see like what other campus partners are already doing this and what we can do to further support them. And I think again, partnerships is something that can make AS stronger.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Leslie, and then Rebecca and Mariah.
Okay. Beyond just using student money wisely, AS should be using student money profoundly, or using it meaningfully, creating services and programs and events that students actually want to see and will actually benefit from. Actually, my vice president also went on that trip to go see those ropes courses. And something else that she's doing beyond that is also looking how she can help support services like the food pantry or the Dream Center, because those are resources on campus that sadly are not being funded enough or don't have enough resources to adequately help every single student who needs their help. So that would be a priority for our administration. And also, as far as access or as far as accessibility, the Code of Finance is not accessible at all. As a club leader, as someone who has tried to get club funding or funding for my club for events, it's been so difficult to not only just reach out to the MIC, but also the chair of clubs and orgs and also the chair of finance in the past when I was a club leader. And so that should not be the case. Clubs are the #1 ways that students first get involved on campus. There are—
We have to stop you there. Any more rebuttals? Rebecca?
Back to mental health, we should be treating it the same as physical health. See, some students, college students in general, go through a very difficult time in colleges, especially when we have such a large underserved, underrepresented community. The CSSA is currently working on a bill so that there is one mental health provider for every 4,000 students, and that could greatly impact change. And we want to be at the forefront of creating that change and making sure that CSUN students are really well taken care of, basic needs, and of course in events and programs.
Okay, thank you. Mariah?
Just bouncing off what you said, Rose, I'm not sure if my council just isn't aware of the new change, that there is no longer a cap, but just about a month ago when I went to my counseling service, I was notified that I only have, I think it was 6 sessions left or 5 sessions left. So I don't know if they canceled the cap or they put it back or what happened, but she's not aware, just an FYI.
Are there any more rebuttals? Rose.
Feel free to contact me. We can talk about it more one-on-one and I can help you out. But I think just generally kind of putting it out there, I think a lot of times the budget, it's just, we need to have an opportunity to explain the breakdown. And I think a lot of students who are not, let's say, part of the College of Business and Economics, they don't understand, including myself before I entered this position where I was just confused. And I think we need to find a way to like really understand that and also understand the difference between equal resources and equitable resources. I don't think we should go around saying like, I think everything should be the same, because again, it's the equity gap aspect that I think is very crucial, and it's something that Project Red is
Stop right there, Rose. Sorry. Moving on to the next question.
Mariah, do you think that it's been made clear to students that they can opt out of paying the AS fee? How do you justify a yearly fee of $222 on top of tuition and other fees when nearly 41% of CSU students report food insecurity?
What was the first half of that? I got the second, but what was the first thing you said? I'm sorry.
The first thing?
Yeah, like the first part of the question.
Do you think that it's been made clear to students that they can opt out of paying the AS fee?
Oh yeah, okay. I would say that it has been clear that you can opt out. If I remember correctly, when I went onto my portal to opt in or out, it was like a little red box outside of like whatever the other descriptions were. So I do think it has been made clear, but I definitely think that if we're going to be united, we should definitely make students aware of why it would be beneficial to participate in that. And just how you said, they're probably looking like, why would I pay anything extra when I'm already spending all this money on a parking pass and books and, you know, etc. So I do understand that students do experience hardships where they don't want to pay anything extra. They just want to pay the bare minimum. But I think that if we're going to be a united front and actually make moves, we actually do need money behind that. So it'll be necessary to let the students know why they're paying anything extra, rather than just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess they're just going to be oblivious, you know.
Thank you, Mariah. Rose?
Can you please repeat the question? Thank you.
Sure. Do you think that it's been made clear to students that they can opt out of paying the AS fee? How do you justify a yearly fee of $222 on top of tuition and other fees when nearly 41% of CSU students report food insecurity?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think a big part of it is, when talking about the opt-out option, is transparency. And again, explaining what the associate students fee is, how it's broken down, how it affects our campus life, campus culture, and how we would benefit for the fee. I think a lot of times, like, people just focus so much on like, why am I being charged this? And they just get told because you have to. And I think that's an issue in itself. And I think that we need to explain, okay, here's how it's get broken down to, and here's how it's going to help student life. And I think that's really important, that not like, it's really hard to draw correlations with like the ASV, the USV fee, housing insecurities, food insecurities, financial aid insecurities, because like there's so many different variables that each student will face. So I think it's really, really hard to draw some kind of correlation, but I think it's really important to showcase where your money is going and where you're going to get it from. Very similar to like the USU fee. If someone says, well, I don't use the gym, why should I pay the gym fee? Again, it's like, well, let me show you how it's helping student culture, student life. And I think it's just important to highlight the transparency and how it breaks down, without the need, and make it available online. Again, I think it is, but it's similar to some of the candidates mentioned before. It's so hard to get there without being involved and knowing. And we just need to make it more accessible for students to understand how their fee really impacts student life.
Thank you, Rose. Leslie?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Do you think that it's been made clear to students that they can opt out of paying the AS fee? How do you justify a yearly fee of $222 on top of tuition and other fees when nearly 41% of CSU students report food insecurity?
Thank you. As far as it being clear to students, I would have to disagree, because I pay my tuition out of pocket. And so when I'm looking at that place where I need to, pay, I don't see it. Maybe I missed it. I always go in with the intent on paying it, but maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen it, and I don't think that it's accessible. But anywho, regarding justifying that cost and fee, it's like how some of the ladies have already mentioned, is that it goes to benefit different aspects of the campus or different parts of our campus community that we do use, right? Maybe I don't use the Oasis, but I do use the library and I do use other parts of the campus that enrich my overall experience. I think that it's an issue of transparency. I agree that associate students could be more open with the way how our money is being spent, or the money that we collect from students that goes to associate students is being spent. I think the way that we can do that, and this is something that our campaign has already promoted or as proposed as a policy, is that we would like to have a transparency portal. The CSU has a transparency portal where you can go in and you can look at graphs and see how things were being spent and a record of how things were decided to be spent. I feel associated students can do that. We already have records of our Senate meetings, and we can put that into an online platform that students can access and see if they want to know. Within that, we can also really provide a breakdown of how that money is being spent, and work in tandem with the university to really show a breakdown of like where does student money actually go and where do they get that benefit.
Thank you, Leslie. Rebecca?
I do not think that there is enough transparency. I personally didn't know for a while that you could opt out of paying that fee. So I think it may be a button somewhere at the bottom of the page when you're paying your tuition, and most people don't know about it. They assume that that's the full tuition, that's what's required of everybody. But I do think that the AS fee does go a long way. It provides essential services and resources to our students, and as well as subsidies. So as was mentioned previously, just because you're not using one resource doesn't mean that you're not benefiting greatly from another. And I think through benefiting each student individually, we can really form a stronger community that's stronger together, and we can make great changes happen for each and every one of us with that fee. It does go a long way. We just need to make sure that people know where it's going and that it is going a long way.
Thank you, Rebecca. Does any candidate want to add anything? All right. Oh, Leslie?
And I guess just also trying to think of ways to give that money back to students when we can. One thing that we would like to do, and that we've seen other campuses do as well, is the creation of scholarships. These scholarships would be to benefit different vulnerable populations on our campus, or students who are in need, emergency funds and whatnot. That way we're actually giving that money back to students directly in a way that they can tangibly feel it. That way it doesn't just feel like we're a dragon sitting on a pot of gold.
Thank you, Leslie. Rose?
Well, for that, I think it's personally, like I would be curious to see what the student population thinks about that, because I've had a similar conversation about starting scholarships within AS that roots from the ASV, but it's really hard to ask a student who's paying out of pocket, right? Hey, pay for this ASV, but it's going to go back to paying for someone else's fee. And that's really, really hard, and something that I think requires a sensitive conversation. So I'm curious to see, like, if that idea takes place, like, to see what the feedback from the students were or are, because again, or just creating scholarships from a different aspect. Like, I know I created a scholarship for Camp Matador through alums. So it wasn't coming from the ASV. So I still think it's possible. You just have to have the right conversations with different alums. And I know the Alum Association helped me out a lot with the Camp Matador scholarship I created.
Thank you. Rebecca?
The ASV goes a lot further than scholarships as well. It creates jobs. The ASV funds a lot of the AS jobs that we have on campus. And these students are empowered through their jobs. Not only are they getting a paycheck, but they're getting involved on campus and having their voices be heard directly. And they become the representatives of our campus. So I truly think that this is a really important aspect of our funding, but it needs to be better advertised, and we need to have more transparency, whether that's posting it everywhere, emailing it directly to students. Students need to know where their money is going to, and that's really the root of our transparency issues here at CSUN.
Thank you. Mariah?
I would just say beyond, like the fee funding jobs and all of that stuff, that's really great. But going back to what I've said previously, for the students that just come to campus and leave, those people getting paid for their jobs and getting involvement isn't doing anything for them. And just like you guys have said as well, they need to know where the money is going, and it needs to actually benefit them. Because if you're just a student that's coming and going, it doesn't matter what is or isn't happening on campus to you. And that's the whole point of this position, in my opinion, is to get people drawn to actually wanting to be part of campus rather than just being on campus.
Thank you, Mariah. Are there any further comments? Rebecca?
The ASV provides resources and activities and programs that, Mariah, like you mentioned, to make students want to stay on campus. That's a really big issue as well that we have as a large commuter campus. We need to not only create jobs, but we need to create a community.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anyone else? All right, we're going to move into the final portion of our debate. These next questions are specifically tailored to each individual presidential candidate. Candidates will have 3 minutes to answer the question directed towards them. When finished, other candidates will have the chance for a 1-minute rebuttal. After all candidates that want to speak have spoken, the candidate who answered the original question will also get a 1-minute rebuttal. Let's start. Rose, when you ran for vice president of AS in 2018, one of your campaign promises was to rename the Disability Resource and Educational Services Center, or DRES, to differing abilities, because you thought the word disability had a negative connotation to it. However, the name for the center has remained the same. Why were you unable to make this change while you were in office, and do you plan to revisit this if you are elected?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. So I still strongly believe that the word disabilities has a negative connotation that you can't do something, versus different ability has the connotation that you can, just in a different way. And that's still something that I strongly believe in as part of my pillars. The reason being, I didn't further pursue into actually making that name change, because I came to find out that making a name change on a building is extremely hard at CSUN. As many of the students of Color Coalition are eagerly fighting and advocating to have the name change in the Ovia Library, it's not an easy task. And a lot of times when I was in those conversations about the DRES Center, it's a very similar to like, why fix something that's a little broken versus there's more priorities on campus. So I kind of had to make a choice versus this is a personal pillar that I want to do, but these are the pillars that the students need. So I put aside my personal agenda of like making the name change and prioritizing what the students wanted and what the students needed. I definitely want to revisit the conversation, because I know a lot of students who utilize the DRES Center don't feel empowered to say, yeah, I'm part of the DRES Center, because it should be something that's empowering. It shouldn't be something that they should be embarrassed about. Similar to the connotation of financial aid. I have financial aid. I don't think people should have embarrassed for that, because it's part of your identity, is who you are. And I'm a huge advocate in celebrating your identities. So it's definitely a conversation I want to have, but I also recognize that there's priorities that need to take place at CSUN. And sometimes name change regarding the DRES Center might not take over priority just as the OVIA should be, if that makes sense. But yeah, I still definitely believe it's something really important. And again, it's a conversation that I'm looking very eagerly to have. But I think there's a lot more important things to address in our campus culture.
Does anyone else have something to say? Okay, seeing no discussion, let's move on.
Mariah, unlike the other presidential candidates running in this election, you have not had any previous experience within associate students. As a political outsider in this race, what qualifies you to hold a position of AS president?
I would definitely say that the main thing that qualifies me is that I'm a person that's willing to listen, and I feel as if my communication is very spot on. So when it comes down to making decisions, I'm willing to listen and understand before just trying to pretend I know everything. I'm very quick to just simply say, I don't know anything about this. So, person A, what do you know? What can you tell me? What can you teach me? And let me do my own research and come to a conclusion that way, rather than being a know-it-all and acting as if I do know everything. I also think that it is more of a positive than it is a negative, because when you go into something with experience previously, no disrespect to any other candidate, of course, when you go into something with previous experience, you believe that you know something, and it may block your ability to, change something. It's almost like you're having a bias, but you don't particularly need to do it. It's just something that is because you've been around. And there are pluses and minuses with that as well. But I do think that in this case, it does play to my benefit. I know that I am qualified for the position, and I hope I do make it. But if not, I do believe that the other girls can do it as well. It would be an honor. But yes, that is my main thing, communication and the will to actually want to understand, the desire to want to make a difference, and just the feeling of already being on the outside and being a student that did not feel connected to Associated Students. So I'm making a stand to be the change that I would want to actually see.
Thank you, Mariah. Are there any topics or are there any comments or rebuttals? Rose.
I just want to kind of highlight the word bias that you showcase. I think that's really important to showcase that like people will have bias regardless if you have experience with an AS or you don't. And that know-it-all aspect, I think people confuse that with actually having tangible experience. Again, similar to me trying to rename a center, that was me completely like, yeah, let's do this. But little did I know the steps and process of achieving a goal that big. But I do think that it's important for people to understand that like you should have experience outside of associate students so you can bring something in, which is why I personally stepped away last year. I had no affiliation with associate students because I wanted to find myself and become a better leader. So I involved myself with the Office of Student Involvement Development, and I involved myself with the TUC board as an executive member. And I think it's really important because, again, we all have bias, right? So I think that it was really important for me to personally step away from AS for a year, kind of reconfigure who I am, how I am as a student leader, and how can I become a better advocate. So I do appreciate you bringing up and highlighting that fact.
Are there any more comments or rebuttals? Rebecca.
Yeah, I think that is very important. Like you mentioned, candidate Murray and candidate Merida. But I do believe that with experience comes knowledge. And I'm very lucky to have a vice presidential running mate who's actually a senator. And we disagree on a lot, but at the same time, we know how to work things through and get things done. And we come from very different perspectives. Being on cabinet, I see a completely different side of associate students than a senator would. And we also have experiences from other organizations. So it's really important to come out into this position knowing your goals and having some experience, but also coming in with an open mind and looking for new opportunities.
Thank you. Mariah.
I also wanted to highlight the fact that although I don't have any experience within the associated students leadership positions at CSUN, I definitely have natural leadership abilities just because of who I am and how I was raised, that independence that you need. And like the girl said, you know, just the confidence and all of that stuff that you need as a leader, and the open-mindedness, all of that comes into key as a leader. And it's just something that I was naturally given, and I love it, you know, and I actually want to actually use it towards something rather than just having it and just kind of going about daily life.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more comments or rebuttals? Nope. Okay.
Leslie, you were the chair of legislative affairs for the 2019-2020 school year when you abruptly quit in the middle of your term. What led you to quit and run for AS president after leaving your position, and why should students trust you after dropping this position?
That's an excellent question. So I decided to run for Associated Students President a while back. This is something that I had been thinking about for a very long time. So there is no correlation as to, oh, I thought about running after I quit. I quit honestly due to a hostile environment. I don't like to speak publicly too much about the situation as it was something that was deeply personal. However, environment is critical for ensuring that students stay involved and actually liking being involved. Working in hostile environments with people who gaslight and manipulate is something I'm not interested in. So I left because of those reasons, and I chose my mental health over being in a situation that wasn't good for me in a space that did not make me feel good. So that is the reason why I left. I did not leave because I didn't care, and I didn't leave because, you know, for any selfish reasons. This was an appropriate move that needed to happen. Regarding trusting me, my advocacy and my involvement has always been consistent. I maintain my advocacy outside of AS by working for Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel, which is our state representative. So as far as trusting me, I'm still the same person, someone who is passionate, someone who cares deeply about the work that I do, and someone who will come into this presidency wanting to get something done and creating an environment in which the people who I work with are also comfortable as well.
Thank you, Leslie. Do the other candidates have any comments to make? Rebecca?
I think it's so important as leaders that we learn to navigate through environments. Not everybody gets along all the time, and things get difficult when you have so many strong leadership personalities in one place. And as a president, I feel that I'm able to do those things, and I'm able to work through these tough times and difficult challenges. Even when things get hard for me, I really try to put my best foot forward and not step away from the challenge, but instead rise up to it.
Thank you, Rebecca. Mariah?
Leslie, I just wanted to go ahead and let you know I really do respect your decision, and I appreciate that you were able to, you know, understand that you being mentally stable is more important than a position. And granted, there is a job that needs to be done, but if you don't even feel safe or comfortable and on any stand, it is important to, you know, take yourself out of that and maybe let the situation work itself out. So I definitely do respect that, and I'm sorry that you had to go through those things.
Okay. Anyone else? Rose?
Thank you. I just kind of want to commend all of you for sharing your stories. I think it's really important, the aspect of mental health, and being someone who's been in a similar position. It is a lot easier to walk away from a cabinet position than it is from a vice presidency or presidency. And I think you all are extremely well aware of that. And I also want to point out where there's going to be times where like I got yelled at for not being Latino enough because I wasn't out there protesting, right? So I just want to kind of put out there that I understand that this is not an easy task, and understand that being president or being vice president, it's not like being God, you know, it's not like you know all the answers. And I think it takes a huge level of self-awareness to be able to admit, like, again, I'm wrong, or again, I need to step away. So again, I commend you, Leslie, for walking away, because at the end of the day, like, how can you do a good job if you don't have the right support and the right leaders? And I think because you've been in a situation where you didn't have a strong support system, you know what not to do. And so I've also been in those kinds of situations outside of AS. So I'm also well aware of like those kinds of experiences.
Thank you, Rose. Do you have anything to add, Leslie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for acknowledging that. I really, okay. So in quitting, one of my biggest fears was being perceived as someone who didn't care, who walked away from their work, right? And so it really means a lot to hear that you all understand what it's like, because being in positions of leadership is really stressful. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Leslie. Let's move on.
Rebecca, in an Instagram post made by the current AS president, she wrote, "Make sure you vote for the most qualified candidate," on the photo of you and her together. Do you think it's ethical to have the current AS president endorse you and claim you're the most qualified candidate?
Going back to experiences, I think it's so important that we take experiences and we put them to good use. There is a lot of talk about the current administration, both positive, both negative, and I think being in this administration, I have been able to learn with and grow from this experience. It's been an honor serving, and I hope to be able to serve in any capacity in the future. But whether it's ethical or not, I think everybody has individual opinions, and the president does not speak on behalf of the Associated Students body. This is an individual post. This is something that this president and I have worked closely together. And I think I have shown through my work that I'm qualified, I'm dedicated, I'm passionate about serving students, and I am authentically serving students. I'm doing this for the right reasons, and I'm not afraid to say that. And no matter how many times I stutter on my questions, doesn't mean that I am not the most qualified candidate.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals or comments? Rose?
I definitely disagree. I think it's definitely a question of ethic and morals, because when I had President Beverly Natagu and myself as vice president, we made sure that on at least a social platform, we became neutral. Why? Because we are not being asked to represent Rose, we're being asked to represent the whole Associated Students. And I understand that you may think your perspective is, well, the current AS president isn't sponsoring as president, she's sponsoring as a friend. At the end of the day, it's the same person. And I think that's the hardest thing to juggle, is the multiple hats you have to wear. And at the end of the day, like, if I do something and I make a mistake, people are not going to judge me as a student, people are going to judge me as president. And same goes, if I do something that I think I'm doing a good job, people are going to judge me as president, because at the end of the day, how are the other candidates supposed to feel when they don't have the support of someone who's supposed to be the primary advocate for all matadors? You know, so I do definitely think that it's a question of ethics. And at the end of the day, like, I think that what best candidate is per everyone's individual definition.
Mariah?
I do, excuse me, I do find it unethical to, kind of claim yourself as the most qualified candidate when it comes down to what the students believe. And it is great to have that confidence, and I do admire that. However, it does go to a certain point where you have to remember what your purpose is. And having, that post, which I didn't know about until right now, plus having, the attitude that was just shown right now, it is unfortunate that it clearly sounds like the purpose of this has gotten lost. Kind of how Rose keeps going back to it, it's not about us, it's about them. And, I really do hope that whoever watches this can figure out who they feel is the most qualified, but just don't forget what the purpose is. And it's the students. It's not about us, and it's not about what we think about ourselves. It's about what they perceive about us. And that's unethical.
Leslie,
Yeah, I definitely do agree that it is very unethical. The Associated Students President and Vice President are supposed to be representatives for all students, no matter where they go. They're always wearing the CSUN letters, which is something that I've always heard the current AS president say. So by that logic, if they're always wearing the CSUN letters, then that also means that the posts that they make have an impact on the way how our students who see that post think. Right. And so it's unfair for the other candidates to suddenly become disqualified because of something that the AS president said and made clear, and is basically having a bias towards one candidate, which is something that is not good for a general democracy or what is supposed to be a democratically elected position.
Rebecca, do you have anything to say?
Of course, again, going off of my experiences, I've seen the mistakes that current administration has made, and I've seen the great things that we have done as well. And if elected, I hope to serve students fully and completely. You know, that I do not see myself as better or above anybody else. And I'm sorry, deeply sorry if it was interpreted that way. Our goals are all the same, and I think that we should all work together to serve the students. And that's why I'm not saying in any way that I'm better than anybody else. I was answering the question that was given to me.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. So now, candidates, you were asked to prepare closing statements. You will have 2 minutes to give that closing statement. We'll begin with Leslie. Feel free to go ahead.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, I want to be your next Associate Students President because of the love and passion that I have for our campus community. Our slate offers students who are talented individuals with extensive histories in advocacy, student leadership, and teamwork. New Beginnings means an opportunity to seize the open window to create change across all different platforms. As representatives of the student body, we owe service to all Matadors. I don't want to be the AS president for some Matadors or for just specific populations of Matadors. I want to be the AS president for all Matadors and address every single need that needs to be addressed in the time that I can with the power that I have. Our campaign values, access, empowerment, and advocacy are all rooted in the idea that student government has far greater potential for reaching students and addressing their needs, and being informed on their behalf. Our slate does not offer abstract ideas, but rather tangible solutions, and you can find those solutions on our marketing or on our website, on our Instagram, where you can learn more about us. We want to turn student demands into realities. Follow us on Instagram at New Beginnings CSUNs and vote New Beginnings April 1st and 2nd.
Thank you, Leslie. Mariah?
Oh, hi, that's me. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. I'm just a bubbly person. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't mean to be so goofy. But anyways, just gonna read this off the screen. So throughout this debate, I've tried to show you guys who I am and what I stand for. If you found who I am as someone that you can trust to speak on your behalf and start the change you would like to see on the campus, I hope to have your vote. The main goal of this meeting is to allow all voters to experience each candidate and see who their options are and give an honest opportunity to support someone you trust and someone you believe can make a change. Rather be myself or any of the other amazing candidates, I encourage everyone to vote and get involved to make CSUN into the best place for you. If you can relate to anything I said or feel comfortable telling me what you would like to see or any of the other beautiful women on here, I would strongly suggest voting. And I mean, if you want to vote for me, vote for me. But if somebody else hit those key points for you, vote for them. I would strongly suggest voting. Oop, lost my spot. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you to the elections committee for being so supportive and helpful, always answering the questions. And thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Rebecca?
So our campus is divided, our students are not informed, and we are not aware of the potential that each one of us has to make change. We are fighting with faculty and with each other, when instead we should be fighting together for a common cause. We all want to have a meaningful and impactful, positive college experience, want to graduate and walk across the stage, get a good job, and lead successful lives. But we can't cross our fingers and hope for the best. We must actively seek solutions to the challenges that we face every day. I guarantee that we will do whatever it takes to ensure that all Matadors have the resources, platforms, and support needed to accomplish goals. And when you vote on April 1st and 2nd, remember to vote for Matadors Empowered, because together we're all Matadors Empowered. We stand for service, community, and transparency. It's your campus. Be heard.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rose?
So Dion Turner and I both believe that Associate Students is honestly a machine that ultimately has the capability to be so, so beautiful. We understand that creating beauty and inspiring others to embrace their inner beauty in themselves is work. And we understand that the organizations and the departments takes real work that we are both dedicated to. We decided to name our project Project Red because we know it's not going to be easy, and we know that we don't have all the answers, but we know how to get those answers, and we're motivated to connect with the students in authentic ways that are more than just meetings, but ways that actually take us out there to be part of this community of Matadors. We understand that we represent a campus of about 39,000 students. We understand the issue with equity gaps. We understand the microaggressions. We understand working with different leadership styles with finesse. We ultimately are here to serve the students. I've said it a million times and I'll say it again. It's not about me, it's about them. It's about us. Not only at CSUN, but at a CSU-wide level, working closely with other campuses to be better advocates for students. And we really hope that everyone watching this take this seriously, because your voice matters. Your voice really, really matters. And right now, our campus is at this really interesting transition where there's a lot of change coming in and out. And this upcoming administration can literally make or break what kind of advocacy goes on. So thank you for your consideration. Thank you for listening to all of us talk. And I hope you vote Project Red on April 1st and 2nd.
Thank you, Rose. And that concludes this debate. Make sure you vote on April 1st from 8 a.m. to April 2nd from 7 p.m. If you want more information on the candidates, visit our website at csunas.org/elections. Thank you, Matadors, and thank you, candidates. Remember that your voice is your vote, so express your voices and vote.